What started out as a portfolio project has evolved into a full-fledged game that's been wishlisted on Steam for over 300,000 times. Hello everyone and welcome back to a new first look at a game yet to be released and to see if this is a game for your wishlist or not. This time around we're looking at an indie title called Ferocious, which is an action-adventure game with some survival elements. It draws inspiration from Jurassic Park, Crysis, Farcry and the 2005 game of King Kong. The concept for the game comes from Leonard Saalfrank, who started this project to showcase his programming skills and decided to upload this initial work to social media when COVID hit. It wasn't necessarily the idea to produce a game, but it got picked up really fast by fans and eventually he connected with tinyBuild. tinyBuild is the publisher you might know from the Hello Neighbor and Gravekeeper games, and this essentially got the ball rolling, turning a once solo dev operation into a small development studio called OMYOG, now roughly employing about 5 people. The game is being built using the Unity engine and I gotta say it looks really impressive, but it's important to know what the game is and what it isn't, but more on that later. So in a nutshell, tinyBuild contacted me and asked me if I wanted to try out the demo, which I did, and I played for about 10-11 hours, completing both levels that are currently available in the demo. So I just want to walk you through the game, give you my take on it, which is hopefully a fair portrayal of the gameplay and its features, so you can see if it's a game for you. Now, fair to mention, the game is still in active development, so the preview is of course based on a demo, but it also means there are still placeholders, and while most mechanics and systems such as level design, mission design are finished, other elements such as the UI will still be getting an upgrade before the 1.0 release, which is where OMYOG is now working towards. Also important, development will continue after launch. Active development, after all, this is an indie studio, so it's always going to be the case where they have to make decisions based on capacity versus workload. You can see from the footage they already have a lot of work done. You can imagine if you have an idea like this, you want to do so much more. There's always stuff to be improved, added. Each mechanic can be built out in a much broader sense, but then again, how much time would it take your team to do that? So you have to make a decision somewhere. So they are going to choose to release the game, a 1.0 release, and then still actively develop afterwards. I'm giving you my take, my view on the game in its current state based on this demo, and I always strive to do so in a reasonable and realistic way. And to give you guys a better picture of the game, I also got the chance to have a talk with Leonard himself to get some more information on the development of the game and who this game is for by design. So let me know afterwards what you think of Ferocious down in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get to it. You find yourself marooned on an uncharted island and separated from your brother after the boat you were on sank and you both washed up ashore. Unfortunately, you got separated in the process. Now your brother is taken by unknown mercenaries, so you start off on your mission to find your brother somewhere on the island. The main gameplay loop is you have to explore and progress through the map by solving small puzzles at these temples or find your way through a mercenary base. What's important to know that it's a story-driven linear game, it's not an open world game, so you get to explore the island while making your way to certain objectives, and upon reaching a certain waypoint you will progress the story. Now like I said, there are small puzzles across the map. Some of them are optional, so they are spread around across the map. Some of them are in corners and you really have to go out of your way and spend some time to reach them, to solve them, and others are mandatory, so they're the same kind of puzzles that you'll discover at the optional sites, but you have to actually solve them or otherwise you won't progress. Now they're not difficult, they're quite easy to do, they're not super hard. If anything, it's done in such a way that it's fun to explore the map and you can really take in the environment. And again, like I said, immersion is a big pillar of this game, so that works nice in tandem. Different gameplay elements are introduced or unlocked along the way, so it's done gradually. It's not like you're being thrown into the deep end end of the water at the beginning of the game. So along the way you get to meet new dinosaurs, how to deal with them, and I think it's always a nice combination what you see between having story integrated and on-screen tutorials. So you're being taught how to craft items, how to deal with certain enemies, and overall I think it's being kept simple by design, which from my perspective I think it's always a good thing to make sure certain mechanics work well together, that there's this nice happy flow with everything combined going on. Now my first impression, there's a great atmosphere due to the environmental sounds and immersion. That's something to really keep in mind to determine if this is a game for you. Immersion is a big pillar of the game and it really shows in a lot of things. So for instance, we all know the effect that rain nowadays in modern games has. So you see raindrops or blood when you get injured. You can see particles running down your screen, and they took that idea and applied it to flies. So when you're standing still, you're obviously in a very humid jungle, tropical-like environment. So when you stand still at a certain point, you can actually see flies walking across your screen, which is just a nice little detail. Now, I love that in games when, you know, they actually have enough time, even for small indie projects, when they have time to add stuff like that. There's another great example, just a bit, but talking about environment, it looks very much like the impression you might get from the original Jurassic Park movies. So overall, there's a great build-up in the story and the way you're introduced to dinosaurs. I think the vibe is excellent, especially as you're working your way towards your first encounter with a dinosaur. Speaking of which, for a game that is about dinosaurs on an uncharted island, let's get into the dinosaurs. So as I mentioned, there are puzzles you have to solve. I'm not gonna spoil the entire thing of how it works, because it's also fun to just discover for yourself, but you actually get to not just fight dinosaurs, but you get to make allies out of dinosaurs. So there are different ways to interact with dinos. You can pick up the small ones to help you solve puzzles. You can get them to attack mercenaries, and you can even ride the larger ones, which is really cool. So there are a good amount of dinosaurs in the game. The full game will contain one more new dinosaur apart from the ones that are already in the demo. Also, there will be more creatures added in the full game, and it's still going to be a surprise to what they add to the game. That's still going to be a surprise, but they're going to be mostly be added for immersion. So now we're getting a bit more into the separate parts of the gameplay. So let's start with survival. Now, it's not a pure survival game, so there are no highly complicated hunger, thirst, or other health related systems. Basically, you just have armor and health. Crafting is made up out of items to manage armor and health, and you have some basic tools that can be made. So think about like a knife or a spear, but that's it. So there are no huge lists of items that you can craft. Also, there is no inventory management with any weight penalty system. So inventory is just a list. You could consider it to be great because it doesn't distract. Just know that again, it's a work in progress. So the inventory that you do see at this point in time is still up for revision. So that will be adjusted. Now about exploration, as I said, you explore in a linear fashion. The maps I've seen so far are pretty big. There are some great moments where you get to really see how big the map is. There are boundaries and there is untraversable terrain, which adds to the travel time, but I never really experienced it as an issue because I was just happy walking around and exploring the environment. Most of the time you'll also just be on the lookout for enemies anyways. Mercenaries pose the largest threat from what I've seen so far, but it stands to reason that the most memorable dinosaur encounters won't be spoiled in a demo, so I'm sure there'll be some other ways to experience exploration in terms of, you know, danger assessment and what to be on the lookout for in the full game. Now, part of exploration, you really have to find your way on how to get to a certain point. You can do that on your own. Yellow paint is also available. You can toggle it on and off, but aside from yellow paint, let's say you have it toggled off, it's pretty easy to identify that part of the map or the environment where you need to go. There are fallen trees. There are certain rope up or climb up points, which are pretty easily identifiable. It's almost like what you will see in Assassin's Creed games, where usually you have this sort of, I don't know, almost like an arrow pointing to where you need to go. But let's say you do get lost and you have no idea where you have to go. I think they implemented something that's really great. I haven't seen it before. If you have, let me know. But when you do get lost, you just need to look up. And there's this flock of yellow greenish birds that all essentially fly the direction you need to go, which is done really great. I think it's a fun way to point you in the right direction. Then moving on to the action part, it's definitely not an action game, it's an action adventure game. So there's this nice alternation between parts where you just get to follow the story, walk around, explore, and then suddenly you come across a situation where obviously there is going to be some altercation between you and those mercenaries or a dinosaur, but you're definitely not shooting dinosaurs left and right. That's just not the game it is. There is a sort of weapon modification system. It's not terribly deep in terms of design and options, but it's just enough to give you some slight changes to the gunplay. Now, something that can of course get more work done after release, but again, they only have so much time to work on it now, but I'm sure this is something that's going to be interesting to a lot of people, and thus they'll likely spend more time after release to add some maybe new weapons even, or get some more customization done for the weapon. Now, combat with NPCs already has a nice flow to it. OMYOG said that they still want to improve this further to get the enemy or the mercenary AI to be more difficult, to get more out of the combat encounters. But at this point, I have to tell you, it's not really difficult. Even for me, I'm not a very good player in the sense that I can spend hours a day playing. I simply don't have the time for that. So even for me, the game is pretty, I would say, normal. It's not easy at some certain points. I mean, if you try to bum rush an enemy base, you end up drawing the short straw. But even at the highest difficulty, the system works, and there still might be some balancing and polishing at some point, surely, but it'll be more based on player feedback after more playtests have been held. And then we get to stealth. Now, it's not a main mechanic, but it's present in the game and enough to make it viable as a sort of a semi-playstyle. Not all the way, so let me give you an example. There is an assassination move present, the classical sneak up to them from behind and then poke them. Spears, you can make spears, you can craft different kinds of spears, basic ones, advanced ones, reinforced ones. I think you need bone for that, but spears are silent. They're throwable, so you can throw them at an enemy. The advanced spears do more damage and they are retrievable. So from that you might get the idea, you know, that you can go through an enemy base, and if you pick the right situations, scenarios, you can actually get some work done with stealth. But at the end, it is enough to make it work, but you won't be able to avoid gunplay altogether. Now, from what you've heard me talk about in the past few minutes and what you've probably seen in the footage, the overall gameplay looks solid. It works, there's a nice flow to it, certain mechanics work well together, and there's different ways to try out certain situations in terms of approach. It's definitely not in a state where you're coming across major issues or bugs left and right, but there has to be a point made, I believe, about expectation management and what this game can provide to you as a player. So it is an indie project. There's a small team working on it. It's not a AAA studio. So I can understand, and this is something that I've talked about with Leonard. I get that when you're looking at the trailer, when you're looking at screenshots, be it on Steam or somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. You might get the impression that this really feels like a AAA game. But when you're playing it, there are definitely, depending on how deep you want to go, I mean, I spent like 11 hours playing the demo, so there are some things I came across, but that's to be expected from a team this size and for what they've done with the amount of people that they have and the amount of time that they spend on it. It really looks good. So it's not to say that because they're not AAA they can't make a quality product. That's definitely not what I'm saying, but I just want you to be aware of what this game is and what it isn't. If you're playing the demo, I've come across some things like terrain clipping, sound displacement, a grenade blast will damage you through objects. It's definitely in a beta state, and these glitches aren't to be expected at this stage, but even when you're just looking at it from the gameplay perspective, are you having fun? Is it playing well? Can you find yourself in the story and in the setting? If that's a yes, then there's definitely no problem with this game. Now, everything put together, the gameplay works. Is it fun? That's subjective, but just to answer it from my perspective, did I have fun? Yes. Can I find myself in the story and in the gameplay overall? Yeah. Are there things noticeable in the demo that might reveal the fact that this is not a AAA game? Sure. But then again, this goes to expectation management. That's to be expected when you're, keeping in mind that this is being made. It started out as a solo dev project. There's now 5 people working at it. It's been in development since 2018. I have confidence that this will be fixed. It's just a matter of when will they get to it. And they have other stuff to focus on right now. But altogether, again, not to say, oh, this is a list of negative things. No, this is what you can realistically expect from the demo at this point in time from Ferocious, but in terms of overall gameplay, it works. Now, obviously, when you hear the words island, survival, and dinosaurs, it's hard not to immediately think about Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, but Ferocious in the demo comes across as a great endeavor by OMYOG to create their own immersive dinosaur adventure experience in the form of a video game. Now, overall, it's not a grinding game, it's not a skill-based game, there are no deep RPG elements, it just offers you an experience to enjoy in a sort of a cinematic way and unravel the story that is happening on that island and to find your brother. No part of the gameplay feels overly aggressive or extremely challenging, so it's really putting the focus on the adventure aspect. There's good pacing and there's a good alternation, at least that's my opinion, there's a good alternation between focusing on the story and then spending time with some action gameplay, finding mercenaries or dinosaurs. The survival elements, they're pretty straightforward, but they simply work. And if you want to check it out for yourself, the demo, I found it highly entertaining. It's still available on Steam today, so you can download it and check it out for yourself. Now, let me know what you think of Ferocious in the comments down below. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed this preview. I also want to mention I'll be going to Gamescom. Well, I'll do my best to gain some insights about upcoming games. So subscribe if you want to see my coverage there, and let me know if you want me to keep an eye out for something in particular, and I'll do my best to accommodate. Until we meet again, thank you all for watching and see you in the next video. Bye everyone.